Hello everybody, my name is Brendan Dukes. I am the acting project manager for my team. Now before I get into introducing the team, as well as the qualifications, along with the outline for today's presentation, I would like to introduce the topic and the project to you guys. Now this project was chosen to help aid a nonprofit organization. As you can see here, my team and I chose to work with Forgotten Harvest, in which two of our team members have had personal volunteering experience with. Now, through research, my team and I discovered that Forgotten Harvest has 5 objectives that they wanted to complete by 2020. Now, because they are so vast, my team decided to narrow it down to 2 options. And we really tackled both of those. The first option being obtaining a new location, whether that be land or a new building. And secondly, the company wanted to improve their efficiency and effectiveness of their current processes. So my team will also look into that as well. Now those are the problems we wanted to help Forgotten Harvest solve. And now that you know a little bit of the background about what we accomplished through this project, I would like to introduce you to our team. Now I had the privilege to work with such a diverse team that was able to communicate effectively while bringing differing views to the table when a problem arose. Now to start off, I want to introduce you to Sarah Barrett. She is a senior civil engineering student at Wayne State University who has performed academic research as well as worked in the field as an intern to gain that on-the-job training and be able to effectively communicate with her client. On top of that, she has personally volunteered at Forgotten Harvest, which gives her an inside look at the procedures that the organization utilizes. Now, I myself am Brendan Dukes, as I have mentioned previously. I am also a senior civil engineering student at Wayne State University who has performed countless academic research, both in a group and individually. Through my course of internships, I have led and participated on multiple successful teams, as well as making sure that projects maintain a budget and don't blow out of proportion. I personally have volunteered with Forgotten Harvest through my church, and I just fell in love with the company, as I have talked to many others who also have. Up next, we have Bilal Farhat. He is a senior electrical engineer, and through his experiences at school, he has learned and improved on his critical thinking abilities, being able to think quickly on his feet, as well as experience customer relationship experiences so that he can just bring closure to that customer and create a connection with them. Up next, we have Zachary Nikolai, a junior computer scientist at Wayne State University. He has worked on multiple teams, as well as developing professional communication skills that he has utilized in the field. Now, Zachary has also worked in budgeting and appraising for companies, so he has a very familiar sense when it comes to understanding what a company likes and doesn't like in terms of budget. And lastly, we have Ojaswe Panthy. She is a sophomore computer scientist at Wayne State. She has academic group experience, so she has participated on multiple groups throughout the course of her schooling. She has provided professional presentations in her job to younger kids at schools, and she has provided interview experiences, which we did utilize by interviewing clients, by interviewing potential business partners, and just anyone we could get in contact with, including ourselves. We actually performed interviews on ourselves. So next, I want to talk about Forgotten Harvest and give you a little bit of a background about the organization. Forgotten Harvest is an organization that was established in 1990. For over 30 years, this organization has been fighting hunger as well as food waste. With the growing amount of food waste and the growing number of hungry people in this world, in this country, in this state, this organization has been growing and growing. And improvements need to be made to help accommodate that growth. Now, like I said in the past, this organization was focused on finding a new location, whether that be buying land or a new facility, as well as improvements to efficiency and effectiveness. Now, here also listed is improvement and expanding the positive environmental image of the company, which will become more apparent in this upcoming slide. My team and I have explored multiple solutions to the previously mentioned problems that the company is facing. For the main issue of securing a new facility, the team has decided that buying a building instead of land would be more economical and more useful for the company, and this will be mentioned later on. Secondly, to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of our organization, the team has come up with 2 recommendations that we believe the organization should go with. The first being solar energy, to again improve that environmental image from the community. And secondly, the team would like to implement vacuum pack sealing to further minimize food waste. Now, I would like to move on to the rest of the schedule for the presentation and give you a brief overview of who will be discussing what topics. We can see here the outline for the rest of the presentation. We have our research methods section, which will be covered by Sarah and go over the research that each of the team members have conducted. We will then transfer over to proposed programs, which will cover 5 tasks, the first 2 of which will be with regards to a new location, and Sarah will also cover those. Tasks 3 and 4 will be all about green energy, implementation, and whether or not it was actually useful for the organization. That will be covered by Zach. Lastly, task 5 is all about vacuum pack sealing, and then we will transition over to the budget and the schedule, which will be handled by Ojaswe. Finally, Bilal will conclude the presentation and provide a brief overview of everything that was talked about. I will now hand it over for Sarah for our research methods.
Hi, my name is Sarah Barrett, and I'll be talking to you about the research methods and tasks 1 and 2 of the proposed programs. So for our research, we did primary and secondary research. For our primary research, we have personal experience. Brad and I have personally volunteered for Forgotten Harvest and did some work with them. We also sent out a lot of questionnaires and surveys to Forgotten Harvest and Backmaster Fresh to get some insight on vacuum sealing food from Backmaster Fresh and new location ideas and their thoughts on green energy from Forgotten Harvest. And we also found some scholarly articles. For our secondary research, we found a lot of online articles that were very helpful in gaining insight onto what we should be looking for a new location, and also the implementation of the vacuum sealing and the green energy. We also had a bunch of maps that we looked at, specifically Google Maps, to see like the locations that currently exist for Forgotten Harvest and what would be the best location to choose based on the surrounding areas. And we also looked at the Forgotten Harvest website a lot to get our insight on what they wanted and what problems they needed to be solved. Now, task 1 talks about buying land versus buying a building. When you're buying land, your cost is going to be much smaller because you're just buying a plot of land. There's no utilities, there's no building, there's no other assets other than the undeveloped land. Buying land also gives you more of a gray area and open space to do what you want with that property. You can build one building, you can build multiple buildings, you can build a main facility and then an off-site, shed or storage area. And then you also have more room to play with. There's a greater area of land that you can do whatever you want with it that fits your needs. Now, for buying a building, you have the basic necessities all you want. You basically have a template. So you have utilities like water service, gas lines, landlines for communication. You have your sanitary hooked up. You have electrical, all those basic things that you don't have to worry about. Your foundation is generally usually pretty good, and you just have to change the building on the inside for your needs. Also, it's less renovations. You don't have to do a from ground up project. All you have to do is basic indoor renovations for the most part. And it also comes with a lower down payment, usually. Task 2 focuses on the optimal location of Forgotten Harvest. Now, when you're choosing an optimal location, you have to ask yourself a series of questions. The questions you should be asking yourself are, what is my budget? What are the utilities going to cost me, as well as what are the taxes going to cost me? And do I want to just straight up buy the property, or do I want to rent out a building or an office space? Then there's also the question of appropriate location. What are the zoning rules? How my clientele going to get there? Do they have the amenities that I'm looking for, the utilities, as well as the type of location? Now, the type of location, you want to make sure that you are paying attention to the mode of transport that your clientele usually uses. For Forgotten Harvest, you might have a bunch of homeless people. Well, homeless people don't have cars. You need to be able to be accessed by sidewalk and areas where you can get to Forgotten Harvest without a car. And there's also things like the reputation of the area. Is it a good area? Am I going to get a lot of good volunteers? Am I going to get a lot of good business? And then you also have the criteria of is it close to other similar businesses? So if you're closer to other similar businesses, you're going to get a lot of employees that are experienced possibly from those locations, as well as new clientele that are looking for maybe a closer location or a similar location where they can get the same help. And there's things you have to consider about your surrounding when choosing an optimal location. For Forgotten Harvest specifically, you need to look for schools, highway systems, and neighborhoods. Now, for schools, you're going to get a lot of volunteers as well as grooming for future employees. The highway systems help you allocate goods, clientele, and employees, so it's more efficient. And then the neighborhoods also give you a plethora to pick from for employees, volunteers, and maybe they know a way to reach out to clientele. Now I'll hand it over to Zach so we can start talking about Task 3.
Hello, I am Zach, and jumping straight into Task 3, our group needed to explore the desires and options for increasing efficiency within Forgotten Harvest's new location. So, first we needed to figure out how we were going to increase efficiency in their new location. So, after brainstorming as a group and coming up with ideas, we noticed how society today tends to be moving more towards and looking more towards using green and reusable energy. So we decided that focusing on green energy and trying to find a way that it can increase efficiency would be what we were going to try to do. So first we had to see if Forgotten Harvest was on board with this idea. And after getting into contact with them, they did seem open to the idea of trying to find ways to use green energy to increase efficiency. Further down the line in the conversation, we found that they were specifically interested in solar energy. They were interested in solar energy mainly due to the consistency of solar energy. Solar energy is consistent because we know that the sun will rise and fall every day, whereas with other green energies such as wind power, it is very inconsistent because because it's very difficult to track wind patterns and wind speed on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. After we found out that Forgotten Harvest was on board with this, we needed to find the benefits and uses of solar energy. So to do this, we contacted a company known as the Green Panel, and they did think that Forgotten Harvest could benefit from using solar energy. They told us that solar energy could power certain parts of the building as well as appliances in the building, such as the storage freezers or the lights. And they also think that solar energy will be paid off in 5 to 10 years after installing it. After we found out that Forgotten Harvest could benefit from installing solar energy, we conducted some secondary research to better understand it. We noticed that there were some large companies that have been implementing and using solar energy, such as IKEA, Walmart, and even Apple. We noticed that we learned that solar energy gave these companies a free, clean energy source in the long term, as well as it had low maintenance costs. We also found another source that claimed that it could be paid off in an even shorter amount of time of 3 to 7 years, and in the future it could give the company 25 to 35 years of a free, clean source of energy. So overall, throughout all our research, we do think green energy will increase the efficiency of their new building, and there will be a short upfront cost that they will have to pay to install the solar energy. However, in the future, the benefits that they will get from installing it will greatly outweigh that short-term cost. So moving on into task 4, we needed to determine whether or not green energy was a viable option for both reducing costs as well as improving community perception of the company. So throughout all of our primary and all of our secondary research, we concluded that green energy will be extremely effective in achieving this. It will reduce costs in the long term. As we've seen earlier with solar panels, it will lower maintenance costs as well as give companies a free source of electricity in the long term. And another example of this would be with greenhouses. It will give the company the ability to grow different produce year-round, even in the harsh Michigan winters. And that will increase the productivity of the company, and it will also decrease the transportation costs as all of the produce will be grown locally. Obviously, since green energy is known, it's meant to be environmentally friendly, the nearby environment will improve, and if the nearby community knows about this, this will increase their perception of it. It can also help the nearby community as it could provide them with fresh, clean food, and it could also offer them new jobs in the green energy sector. So all of this in general just increases the community's perception of the company. So overall, green energy will be extremely effective in lowering costs as it lowers maintenance costs, it lowers transportation costs, and it will increase the company's productivity. And it will increase the community's perception, because if the community sees that they're offering jobs or giving people in need free food and better food, and if they're just doing all this while keeping the environment clean, it will increase the community perception, and that would benefit them greatly.
And our next task was for us to determine if the use of vacuum pack sealing was a viable option for the organization or not. For that, we started by conducting a research to determine the impact of vacuum pack sealing on a produce's life cycle. While conducting the research, we found out that after the use of vacuum pack sealing, we were able to store food for a longer period of time. Because of the use of vacuum pack sealing, a produce could be stored for 3 to 5 times longer than its normal life expectancy. Because of the use of vacuum pack sealing, we will be able to save a lot more food with least amount of food waste. How does the vacuum pack sealing actually work? Vacuum pack sealing is a technique to store produce in a plastic bag where all of the oxygen inside of the bag are extracted out and the product is preserved inside of the bag. And without any outside contact of an oxygen, the product seemed to last a lot more longer than its normal life expectancy. Next, our plan was to look into the budget aspect of the vacuum packed ceiling, how the budget of the vacuum packed ceiling would fit into the organization. For that, our main concern was the maintenance cost, which for vacuum packed ceiling seems to be very low. But the front cost for the vacuum packed ceiling is pretty high. Vacuum packed ceiling for a commercial use can cost anywhere from $999 to $18,000, and this is the amount that it takes for the industrial use. So the bigger the machine, the more it costs. But if we look in a long-term aspect, vacuum packed ceiling is not just only cost effective for the produce, but it will also help us save a lot more money in the future. Because of the use of vacuum packed ceiling, we will be able to produce more food and distribute it among a larger group of people with very minimum food waste. This is a huge benefit for the organization because it will be able to distribute food amongst a larger and people staying farther away from the organization facility itself. Next, we will look into the budget and the scheduling for the project that we were working on. When it comes to scheduling, all of the scheduling and the assignments were all performed online. Online scheduling was probably one of the more difficult tasks for us. As a team, it was very difficult to make sure that everyone was able to come together and talk to each other at the same time. For that, we decided to conduct collaborative meetings. Collaborative meetings were very useful for all of us as a team. We were all looking into our own schedules and figured out that Monday after 5 p.m. was the best time for all of us to come together and stay in a meeting to discuss about the project or the parts of project that we were working on. During the collaborative meetings, we were able to discuss and brainstorm ideas for the specific project or a specific topic for the project. We were also able to make sure that everyone was stayed on task and everyone was able to finish up their assignment for the project. Moving on to the assignments, all of the assignments were distributed among the team members by team members with everyone's agreement. All of the team members were very supportive and very flexible to work with each other with the virtual situation going on, and it was really important to make sure that everyone was getting the help they needed while working on an individual part of assignments. For that, we had draft meetings. Draft meetings were mostly targeted toward the end of the projects and presentation to make sure that everyone was staying on task. One of the best way to stay connected was through the use of WhatsApp. With WhatsApp, we were able to connect and contact each other at our own times via text, even though we were not able to stay in meetings all the time, even with our strict schedule. We were able to make sure that everyone got the help they needed to finish the parts of their assignments. And draft meetings, we also try to hold face-to-face draft meetings with all of the team members at the same times. This also helped us make sure that everyone had their portion, their part of the task done, and everyone had it done with the best of their abilities, and make sure that it was good to be turned in and moved on to the next step. Our next and most important assignment was probably all of the online presentations. All of the online presentations were again done online separately, so each team members worked on their presentation at their own time, at their own space, but they were all put together in a film by our project manager, Brennan Dukes. Next, we will be talking about the budget for the project. So while doing the research, the budget was very minimal to zero because all of the research were done online. Most of our primary research were done via phone or via phone interviews or email interviews, and some with face-to-face interview. But with the current situation going on, we did not have many face-to-face interviews. But even with that, the cost for the research method for the presentations were zero. Next, moving on to the cost for the actual project with the Forgotten Harvest itself. Our primary cost for the budgets included the bigger part or the most expensive part of the project itself. These were the costs for the buildings or the land for the buildings that we were worked on. They were the larger amount of money. And next was the equipment, the heavy equipment that we had to be installed. And these were the costs that was also very high, but all of these costs were to be used for the front cost, but they would help us improvise and make sure that in a long run we would not need as much budget for the facility itself. All of the equipments include vacuum pack sealers, greenhouses, and the choice of green energies. The green energy were also a way to make sure that we had incoming budget. So in a long run, we would have money that is coming into the organization so we can expand the facility a lot more. And moving on, the secondary cost. The secondary costs were mostly the maintenance cost and the implement cost. These were the costs that were targeted toward a short period of time, because in the long period of time, we would not need as much of an implement cost because of the use of the green energies, or such as solar panels or the wind energy that we were about to use.
Hello, I'm Bilal Farhat, and I'll be going over solutions and recommendations. So since Forgotten Harvest has been growing over the years, we thought securing a new location would help its growth. There's two ways about securing a new location. We could purchase land and build a new facility on it, which would cost more, but it would accommodate the needs of Forgotten Harvest better, because it's designed specifically for what Forgotten Harvest's needs are. Or we could take the less costly route and purchase it in existing facility and renovate it. One important thing in buying a new location is the area it's located at. We typically want it next to a highway so it's easily accessible to transport goods in and out of it. And we'd want this new facility to be close to the other Forgotten Harvest locations. One other thing we wanted to do is implement green energy to increase the efficiency of the building. And one way of implementing green energy is by installing solar panels to the building. Solar panels capture light and transmit it to electricity, and that would reduce the costs of electricity bill. And usually solar panels in the long run end up paying for themselves and reducing costs of future energy bills. Another way we'd like to implement green energy is building a greenhouse at the facility. A greenhouse helps the production and quality of the produce. And living in Michigan, we have harsh winters, so the greenhouse would help continue the production of produce even during those harsh winters. Another process we'd like to implement into the building is vacuum sealing. Vacuum sealing removes oxygen from packaging to increase the shelf life of produce, 3 to 5 times its refrigerated life. Forgotten Harvest probably runs into issues of throwing away expired food, so vacuum sealing would help reduce the waste of food. To begin the vacuum sealing process, you'd need a machine and the bags of the machine to package items. Like I said, this would reduce costs of like throwing away expired produce. and go on to our summary. So to sum things up, we want to improve Fergan harvest efficiency and make it more productive. And we want to do this by adopting green energy and the vacuum sealing process. We think it's viable for Fergan harvest to implement solar panels, greenhouse into its facility. But vacuum sealing process, we'd like to go more into depth. Like if Fergan harvest throws away a lot of food, and if they do, the vacuum sealing process would help. But if they don't run into the issue of having to throw away expired produce, then the costs of implementing the vacuum sealing process would not be viable for the location. And for securing a new location, we've contacted Fergan Harvest already, and they said they're already looking into purchasing a building in Oak Park, and which goes hand in hand of what we were thinking of. And we thank you guys for listening, and if you have any questions, please contact us, and we'd love to answer them. Thank you.